Like, a lot of us couldn't afford the cars we drive if we couldn't do monthly payments. Dental care needs to be treated the same way. What do dentists need to know? What do they need to understand? Just take a look at online shopping. Look how easy it is for people to navigate different payment options at checkout with no bias, no discrimination at all. Payment options it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone has access to buy now, pay later.
It's a huge advantage to them. I remember when Facebook ads first came out. Facebook ads first came out and we were running those for people. They were getting basically unlimited patients for next to nothing, and then eventually it becomes crowded, and then it's not a competitive advantage anymore. It's just like any other channel.
Folks who are shopping online and they're inundated with the ease at which they can pay for things, then they walk into some brick and mortar establishment like a dental office, and they are devoid of all that. In a recent survey, we found that 15% of practices are actually offering financing to every patient every time. Only 15%.
All right, we are live and welcome back to another episode. And today I'm excited because I get to meet with Adrian, and Adrian's from Sunbit, and he's actually built a community of people who use financing in the dental industry. And he actually had me come in, speak to them, and several hundred dentists every single month meet with him. So Adrian, I'm really excited for you to come on, talk with us today about what you do at Sunbit. I think your official title is Director, Training and Enablement. And did I get that right?
You did. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah. What do you actually do at Sunbit, and how do you interact with the docs?
Yeah. First of all, the Gary Bird. This is a real pleasure to finally be a guest on the Dental Marketing Theory podcast. Yeah. And thank you for being a guest on my Sunbeast live webinars. I've been hosting these live training webinars for the past 4 years. I do it every Wednesday. And I have 3 different core audiences. I do it for dental practices. I do it for optical care, as well as for dealership parts and service centers. So the Sunbeast user community are all the people around this country, over 155,000 people who are trained and certified to use Sunbit technology. And there's a lot of people at Sunbit who help to manage and foster the relationship with this massive user community. And we do a lot of cool stuff for them. But one of the things I contribute to is these weekly webinars where, we bring in 400 to 500 people live each week tuning in. And we're excited about what more we're going to do with it. But you were actually one of our most popular guests. That was one of the most highest attended episodes. That's
so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, it was really good. Really active user base. And one thing that I love about Sunbit is that you guys really understand the finance landscape. And you even said it there where it's like you are working with car dealerships, auto dealerships, and they have figured out how to use finance. There's no question about that. However, the dental community hasn't really figured out how to use financing to its full capacity yet. I would argue that we're really at the tip of the iceberg. What has been your point of view, kind of seeing those two different sides of the coin, where you work in one industry where people are like, use it for the financing for everything. And now you're in dental as well, and not everybody's using it to its full capacity. What's your perspective of that?
You've probably noticed this before, but this podcast is unsponsored. What that means is we don't get paid to do it, but we want to bring you the best information possible. So how do we make sure that this content stays on the air? We need you to like and subscribe. Wherever you're at, whatever you're listening on, just give us a thumbs up or subscribe, and that helps us out so much. I know that you probably haven't done it, so I'm just going to sit here and wait until you do. 95% of our listeners have not subscribed to our podcast. So go ahead and do it now. Don't make this awkward. All right, good. Back to the show.
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting because, this whole car dealership thing, the car sales side of the fence, they've had plenty of financing options for a long time. It's the parts and service center where you're getting brakes and tires and routine maintenance. That has been underserved. And that's where Sunbit helps out quite a bit. So people just showing up to their service drive at their local dealership for routine maintenance, unexpected repairs, and these out-of-pocket expenses. And what's interesting, that stressful experience for folks just getting their car worked on, it's a similar journey they go through on the medical side of the fence, where they're going to visit their veterinary clinic, they're going to their dentist, and they have these similar journeys where they're either walking in or have an appointment with an expectation of what they need and what they're going to spend, but then ultimately recommendations are made to them that are unexpected or expensive or start to create a lot of stress around having to pay this bill all at once. And especially for dental care or car repair, these are things you need. So what we really focus on is helping dental teams talk to patients about this stuff? Because it's not an easy conversation to have, and financing is not the most exciting topic either.
So how do you help them speed along that process? Because there's multiple different things that are holding back dental offices. So it's like, first, the doctor has to be on board. So the doctor's usually like, sure, we can do some financing, right? So you got some options, but that's not really going to solve the problem, right? That doesn't actually solve the issue that you're facing with the office using the platform and the patients interacting with the platform. And then you get the team on board. So the team, they have to be trained and they have to get up to speed on it. But then there's like this whole third stage I kind of look at. It's like where it just becomes part of your process of, we're going to help the patients get as much treatment done as much as possible. So how do you interact? Where do you fit in that life cycle with Sunbit client?
Yeah, so when a dental team starts using Sunbit, just like anything new, we got to help manage that change, right? There's a new tool. There's a new process to consider. There's a new way of thinking we need to be open-minded about so we can actually, get the most use out of this new tool. Just like any piece of software or thing you use to help achieve better clinical outcomes. Financing is just helping to alleviate stress around payment. Instead of having to pay the bill all at once, how do we help patients navigate options? So the first step, at least at Sunbit, we do certification training. Certification is the thing every Sunbeast, every one of those 155,000 people who've been trained and certified, they go through this process of learning, what is it? How does it work? How do I talk about it? And what are the legal compliance guidelines? And over the years, we've trained and certified all these people, but initial training isn't enough. You have to have continued education. You have to have continued engagement. And I'm very lucky I work at a company like Sunbit that has this tremendous operations team that has all these people dedicated to engaging with these dental teams. Can we provide coaching, additional training, help with your marketing materials, any sort of consultation or guidance on growing your practice and where financing fits in with all that? Because like you and I have been doing a lot of, this marketing stuff. There's plenty of opportunities throughout the patient journey to market patient financing options. And despite all the topics I teach in my Sun-based webinars, marketing and soft skills are the most popular. So even though there's all this Sunbit technology and all this consumer financing stuff to talk about, ultimately it's the soft skills. How do I talk about this? When do I bring it up, and can marketing help me?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so interesting that you say that, because we face the same thing, even when it's something like answering your phones or how to answer questions on the phones. Like, it's just a repetitive thing that you have to keep up on, because if you let it go, it doesn't happen. And what I've noticed with patient financing specifically is the doctors like to say, okay, fine, we can use it. But then there's not really any rails put on when, how, how does that actually work? You get the tool, so to speak, you get the hammer, and you say to your team, here's a hammer, use that in building the house, but you don't actually tell them what we're nailing, why we're nailing it, or what direction things are going. That's what I've kind of seen happen with financing. And just taking a peek on the back end of some of these practices, like patient financing really isn't utilized to its full capacity yet. And I think the reason for that is a couple different things, and I'd love your thoughts on it. Number one is there's a disconnect between the clinicians understanding patients being able to afford dentistry. Like, I think there's still this idea that like people can afford dentistry. I think that most people can't, unfortunately. That's number one. Number two, there's a huge gap on the value of dentistry, meaning not that patients don't understand that dentistry is important and is valuable. It's that they think the cost of a crown is like a tenth of what the actual cost of a crown is. It's kind of like when you do car repairs. When I go in to get my car fixed, and if I get in an accident or if I, something, I look at it and I go, oh, that's going to be $1,000. And I go there and they're like, no, that's going to be $15,000. And I'm just like, what? How is that $15,000 to fix that? And there's that disconnect in dental as well. First of all, do you agree with those two premises? And then also, what else are dentists missing when it comes to patient finance?
There's definitely a disconnect. I'm with you. I don't know where this false narrative came from that people are just overflowing with cash that they can comfortably spend on unexpected expenses. There's a lot of data that shows us otherwise. The latest Moody's report was showing us that the typical American household now needs to spend about $445 more a month for the same goods and services as a year ago. You got 67% of Americans can't put together $400 in cash for an unexpected expense. You got Lending Club reporting that a third of consumers earning $250,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. Where exactly is this false narrative coming from that people have the cash? So when I hear that, oh, my patients don't need it. Really? Because the data is overwhelmingly showing us otherwise. So how do we deal with that disconnect? And this is where education comes into play. Now, what's interesting is that I am on the marketing team at Sunbit. I've worn a lot of hats over the years, but one of the things I've always done is a lot of the marketing tasks. And so I find myself on the marketing team building a lot of educational content, whether it's training courses or video content or interviews and webinars. And a lot of what I focus on is showing the why things are the way they are. Why are patients having a hard time? Why do we need financing options? Why do we need to market these options? And once we start showing the why, that's how we get people to care about what the tool's supposed to do in the first place, which is give people breathing room. Financing is all about basically paying interest to have time. In many cases, that's really what financing comes down to. Like, a lot of us couldn't afford the cars we drive if we couldn't do monthly payments, right?
Exactly.
So dental care needs to be treated the same way. And the other big disconnect, and when you were asking, like, what do dentists need to know? What do they need to understand? Just take a look at online shopping. Look how easy it is for people to navigate different payment options at checkout with no bias, no discrimination at all. Payment options it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone has access to buy now, pay later. You know, if you go to GameStop.com to buy a video game console right now, they got 3 different buy now, pay later options at checkout in addition to credit and debit. And yet folks who are shopping online and they're inundated with the ease at which they can pay for things, then they walk into some brick and mortar establishment like a dental office and they are devoid of all that. And you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier that a lot of practices aren't talking about it. In a recent survey, we found that 15% of practices are actually offering financing to every patient every time. Only 15%. So people aren't going to ask for something they don't know exists. And if you're not going to tell them they got options, then how do they know what to ask for?
And then I also think what ends up happening is the teams adjust, right? So the teams end up having to qualify people mentally, where you're doing all this gymnastics of like, can this person afford all this treatment, or should we start with a smaller treatment so we don't scare them away? I've seen with people who, before financing was really a thing, where they would talk about like the single tooth approach, which I loved, which was basically like, if someone comes in and they're in pain or they just want to get one thing taken care of, you take care of that thing, get them to pay for that, and then talk about their other dental needs later. So that way you can continue to build the relationship, which is all wonderful. I think that stuff's great. However, you're at this point of the game, you're really doing your patients a disservice if you're not doing some kind of financing. And I always tell people, I love Sunbit, done a kind of stuff with you guys. You guys are really awesome. But if you're not, use Sunbit. But if not using Sunbit, use somebody, right? Like, have something, and then and give that option to the consumer, because otherwise you're just going to lose people. And then here's what ends up happening, because I kind of see the back end of this from a marketing perspective. The patients walk out the door, and then your team is just like, oh, they weren't interested. Oh, they didn't want to get the treatment done. And I always have to remind people, like, do you really think there's people out there that are Google searching dentist, finding you, calling you, scheduling the appointment, showing up to the appointment just to be like, nah, this is just for funsies? No one's doing that.
Yeah.
No one's doing that. You blew it.
I'm with you. You actually said something on a previous webinar. I forget which one we were working on together. And you said, it's kind of like how when you go to get tires for your car and the service advisor goes, well, how about this? Let's just start with the one tire, right? You make some payments, you come back in a couple months, and then we'll worry about that second tire. You come back after a couple months. No, let's just, we need to replace all of them. Let's just do it all right now.
Yeah.
Why are we stretching it out?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So,
we're in an interesting time. I really feel like the people are going to have the dental offices that figure this out are going to have a competitive advantage for about 2 years, 3 years before their competition figures this out. Like the people who get on that 15% you talked about, that's not very many dentists, right? That's probably, 15,000 dentists across about 30,000 dentists across the U.S. that have figured this out. And they're going to have a competitive advantage because every patient that's coming through their door, almost every patient, is going to end up retaining with them, and versus the other people where they're still bleeding massively of these people just coming in and walking right out the back door, and their team telling them, oh, they weren't interested, or oh, it's too much, or but in reality, you just didn't have the right options.
When you look at the DNA of high growth, top performing dental teams, you start to notice these patterns. They embrace technology and they embrace financing for all their patients. And even the ones, and then sometimes I get these practices, we're fee for service. We don't do insurance and all that. Still, it's the same thing. Out-of-pocket expenses, financing should probably be a bigger part of the conversation then.
Bigger, correct. Yeah, I totally agree because insurance doesn't really cover anything in dental to begin with, right? Like it's basically like a coupon code that you get, and which works great if all you need is a cleaning and a filling here or there, but it doesn't really cover anything. Like if you need crowns or you need implants or you need braces or ortho or anything like that, insurance really isn't going to do much for you.
Yeah. And when you're talking about dental teams and how we acclimate to this change, how do we embrace patient financing and marketing these solutions to patients through that continued education by just helping to explain why, give them insights into how they can generate awareness, how do they talk to people, how do they put their marketing out there, what are things they can take off the shelf? Because I think a lot of times when we try to provide coaching or consultation on, training skills, marketing or other, sometimes it can feel overwhelming. Like, I don't got time for this. I don't got time to do all that. How do I even get started? Sounds easy, but I'm already spread thin. So I think that's why repetition and consistency is so important. You're a master at this with your content marketing that you do on Instagram and TikTok. I follow a lot of your content, Gary, and you are just consistently putting content out there. You're a master at repurposing content, which is not talked enough about. Because I think a lot of people look at their marketing efforts and they're like, boom, flash in the pan, on to the next idea. And it's like, hey, try to give that thing some more legs. It can be repurposed, it can be reused, and finding out that regular cadence of communications. Some practices already have it built in with appointment reminders, confirmation, notifications, all these things in which they're communicating with patients. So a lot of times it's less about what tools we have available and more about how do we actually use the tools? How do we let others know about the tools?
Yeah, how do we hold the team accountable to actually using the hammer, so to speak? Like I think that's what you guys have gotten really good at is, cool, you have this tool now. Like, are you on board with it? Now here's all the different ways you can use it. And here's how to keep you guys do a good job of rewarding the teams for participating in the game, which makes the game easier. And this, again, if it was something like, well, it's this piece of technology that's going to make dental, it makes it 1% better, but it really at the end of the day, it's not going to change a lot, then it would be a different conversation. This is something at the center of dental that I think is going to become the biggest thing in dental, and it's going to become the biggest competitive advantage. Again, I'm going to say it again, to dental offices in every single market. And there's been other opportunities like this, but very few people take advantage of them. I think of like clear aligners. When people started offering clear aligners and they were the only ones in the market doing it, it's a huge advantage to them. I remember when Facebook ads first came out. And we were running those for people. They were getting just like basically unlimited patients for next to nothing. And then eventually it becomes crowded and then it's not a competitive advantage anymore. It's just like any other channel. I feel like patient financing is that's which is crazy to me because to me, it's like common sense because we use it all the time. It's everywhere. But I think we're at that peak now where it's just like, this is your competitive advantage. You're going to have about a 2-year window and it's going to help you get more patients, retain more patients and make more money. Yes, there's a fee and like Sunbit has to make money and so does every other. Yes, you're going to pay some money, but it's actually going to be a net positive overall. I really, really believe that. Like I see that as this next wave that we're turning the corner in dentistry. I think that's going to be true. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. I'm 100% with you. My background's in educational technologies, and I saw this happen with PeopleSoft in the 90s with Oracle's hostile takeover. I saw this as new technologies were moving from being, on-premise to on-demand. Every corner of industry, you can find examples where there were moments in time where organizations that took advantage of a new wave of change wrote it out for the net positive across the board. And when I watched what happened in the 90s, and I watched people build careers on just being part of that explosive growth, for being at the front of the wave, it inspired me to start pursuing startups and how I eventually ended up at Sunbit, because I just wanted to be part of a wave that early, and feel like I was really enacting change and impact. And it's interesting that now it's become this new home in dental, where our community efforts are really resonating positively. And this actually is a good, bringing it back to this whole Sunbeast thing, because although we do all this education up front to get people trained and certified, and although we do an excellent job of continuing our educational efforts to help promote why this is a win for your practice, a win for you, and a win for your patients, but what more could you do? And the aspect of community was something that was a happy circumstance during COVID. We have all these folks in the field who travel and visit dental teams and provide training and all sorts of consultation. And then all of a sudden, everyone's grounded. We had to pivot to webinars and online training. And even as the team got back into the field, we realized that there was a huge opportunity to continue engaging remotely. And it eventually led to the creation of our Sunbeast mobile app, which is not for patients. It's for dental teams who are trained and certified on Sunbit, that they can access for a knowledge center with tips and best practices. There's rankings and leaderboards to see where they stand at the local and state level. My webinars do national rankings. So a lot of people now use Sunbeast as a way of connecting with each other, that they're not alone in the bubble of their office, that there are peers and colleagues all across the country faced with the same challenges, the same concerns, and are hungry for that connection with each other. That's why we see dental's been fascinating. I mean, look at organizations like ADOM and all these groups who are bringing dental professionals together for the betterment of the industry. And in a lot of your previous interviews for the podcast, Gary, I've heard a lot of people who came to dental through other industries. I think it was a gentleman from your last one. He has that startup in the PMS space. He left Weave and then went somewhere. And he was saying the same thing. He was like, we tried to leave dental and we just said, makes sense. It pulls us right back. I think you made the joke, you can't leave. But we're on the precipice of massive change, and the folks who are on top of it now are going to see some real big positivity to their personal career trajectories as well as their practices.
Totally agree. What's a best way to get in touch with, if someone's listening to this and they're going, okay, I need to take patient financing seriously. Yes, I have one or two options, but I haven't really integrated it with my team yet. What's the best way to get in touch with Sunbit and learn about what you guys are doing? Sunbit.com/dental.
So for dental teams that really want to learn more about how Sunbit technology can help your patients smile now and pay over time, to see why so many people are signing up to use it to help people in their communities, why the Sunbeast program has become such a huge popular thing for people offering Sunbit, and how we're really making positive change in the consumer financing space. Check it out, sunbit.com/dental. And then, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, follow the team, feel free to check that out too. We got a lot of cool stuff we do. And, hopefully I'll get the Gary Bird right here to show up on another one of my webinars. That would be something.
Awesome, man. Well, great. As always, Adrian, great job. Love what you guys are building. It's really, really impressive. And you're solving a lot of problems. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing what you're doing over there at Sunbit.
Thank you so much, Gary. Shout out to all the wonderful people at Sunbit to make this possible, because it definitely is not something that happens in a vacuum. A lot of talented people making all this happen.
Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.